Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new segment we're trying out, which is a pre-match conference. We've got Chris here from Villa Together. How are you doing, Chris?
Yeah, very well. Thanks. By yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Well, I'm kind of not looking forward to this one. We'll get onto this one in a few minutes, why that is. So just first of all, over to Aston Villa. You've been looked over for a long period of time now. You've started the season super well. What do you think that is down to?
I think, I mean, obviously, it took us a while to get back into the Premier League. And then last season we came back. And I think last season was a learning curve for us. I think kind of when you look at the 3 years that we were away from the Premier League, I think the league changed massively. And in that, it became more competitive across, the whole league because the money's massive. You finish bottom of the league, you get 100 million.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 100 million to spend. And then obviously owners and all that kind of stuff on top of that, whatever you get. So it became a lot more competitive. But obviously a big thing for us last season was looking at the signings we made. We bought in, I think, 13, 14 new players.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously for a majority of last season, it was tough for us because we bought in these players and I think average cost of player, we're looking at around 10 million. And these days, a 10 million pound player it's nothing, is it?
Yeah.
These days. So, so there's a lot of debate, I think, especially people away from Aston Villa would say, why did we do that? And there's a bit of debate amongst Villa fans about why we did it. But obviously, we had about 13, 14 players who were out of contract. And a lot of those players, you're looking at the likes Albert Adoma, who went to Nottingham Forest, struggled for game time there, went to Cardiff, and just signed for QPR. So that's just one example. A lot of players who were out of contract, we let them go. We had to bring in new players. So for us, at the start of last season, we showed signs of promise. Obviously, Jack Grealish, is our talisman, and throughout the season, he carried that on from the Championship. And then when it got to lockdown and the football stopped, so what was that? Start of April, I
was
think.
it? Yeah, about March time.
Yeah, because our last game was, I think you beat us 4-0, didn't you, at your place?
Yes.
And I think that was. I'm trying to think when I'm sure that was. It was March or April. I really can't. I think it might have been second week of March, possibly.
Yeah, I think that was about it. We were just about to kick off at Watford, and then the day before they said Premier League's cancelled. So I think it
Yeah.
was the week after that. But I think the last match was Aston Villa.
But so obviously we went into lockdown, and whatever happened. And I think a big thing, and they said, was they did a lot of sessions over Zoom, and it was a lot of training. And one thing I mentioned it on a pod I did with Liverpool fans last week. So post lockdown, pre lockdown, we were the worst team in terms of shots conceded, in terms of shots against. And then after lockdown, we were the fourth best.
Oh wow!
So obviously, it's a massive improvement, and it's a case of, I know it's not, a team's got to convert those chances, but if they're having chance after chance after chance, you've seen it, watching football and whatever, chance after chance after chance against you, eventually, 9 times out of 10, eventually, that team scores, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
So to turn that around was massive. I think that the teams above us who'd conceded less shots against were, I think, Liverpool, Wolves, and Man City. So the best two teams, and Wolves, who had obviously had a good season as well. So we turned it around. I think it was, obviously no one kind of liked there being no football, but it kind of came right for us because we'd hit a bit of a rough patch in December. We looked better in the new year, but then we had key injuries to Tom Heaton and Wesley. And obviously Wesley was, £24 million signing, striker, our main man, kind of a lot of our players built around him.
Mm-hmm.
So they were tougher injuries to take. We had a lot of injuries throughout the season as well. John McGinn broke his ankle in December. So with everything that happened, so lockdown, stuff like that, it gave us a chance to kind of work on tactics, so defensively, and that's what Dean Smith said that's what we're built on.
Mm.
Built on looking at defensively and being harder to beat, which we did. And then B was allowed some players to come back from injury, and the key one being John McGinn. I mean, Wesley's still out now, Tommy Heaton's still out now, but there was a few players who had niggles and stuff like that, so it allowed it to come back. And then obviously we were harder to beat. We still struggled initially post lockdown, but then we did what we needed to do at the end to stay up, and we've kind of carried that form to the start of this season. Obviously, bringing in the new players as well has only improved us, because obviously we've kind of, it's allowed us to, again, what we did in lockdown was work on, this is our issues defensively, which was set pieces, and also kind of breaking down the play throughout the pitch. So the turnovers in midfield, not allowing those shots on us, making sure we're harder to beat. And then again, what we've done now is in the transfer market is being able to say, okay, well, we were unbalanced on our right, so bought in Matty Cash, and then obviously then we've looked at going forward. Wesley's injured, so we bought in Watkins. Obviously Barkley's coming as well, so it just seems to have kind of clicked. And the thing is, I mean, obviously the Liverpool game we massively clicked, but the two games before that, and we beat Fulham easily 3-0. But I still felt there was a couple of gears that we could have gone through. Some players weren't quite at it, and obviously, the Liverpool result was amazing, and it does feel like with the Liverpool result it did click. But I still think there's a lot more to come from certain players. So I think that's it really. Why it's kind of been a kind of progressive thing for the last however many months, how we've got to this stage now where it just seems to be, right, okay, Dean Smith's got exactly what he wants, and we've kind of, our early season form is kind of reflecting what he wants, essentially.
Yeah, it seems pretty good, because especially against that sounds really interesting about that, because obviously from an outsider's perspective and not really knowing the inside, it seems to be Aston Villa were falling off a cliff, and that's what the media was reporting a lot of that as well. And the way you turned it around was great, but especially the recent match against 7-2 against Liverpool. Was that just a case of everything clicking, or because I think Aston Villa deserve a lot of credit for the way that they performed, but just as we saw when we played Man City, it was just all on why Man City are so bad instead of why we so good. So it's probably, I don't know if it was a similar thing. Was it just all the tactics clicked there? Because some of the players that you had were looked absolutely brilliant and looked like they've been playing this formation for a long time.
Yeah, I think it was a couple of things. Going back to your point you mentioned about when you beat Man City, I thought it was interesting when there was a lot of Man City fans afterwards saying, Leicester were lucky and all this kind of stuff. And I was thinking, hang on, it's not like they've beat you 1-0. They beat you 5-2. Mm-hmm. And I know it was, what was it? Was it 3 penalties, was there?
3 penalties, but they weren't like weird handballs or something. They were all clear penalties.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, that the penalties that you won in that game, it was just reckless defending from Man City because they couldn't cope. Players getting into the box, taking them down. So it's similar to that, because I think, if we if we flip both those results, I think the media would be, oh, Man City brilliant against Leicester. And then same with us, Liverpool brilliant against Villa. And you mentioned the other night about Leeds, people going on about Leeds, and they get carried away with Leeds. And obviously they've done well, fair play to them, they're playing well. But something that was interesting was, it was after the Fulham game, Leeds beat Fulham 4-3. Mm-hmm. And the media were like, Leeds are brilliant, can they challenge the top 6, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, Fulham, the only way they're going is down because they've conceded 7 goals in 2 games. But the week before, obviously, Leeds lost 4-3 to Liverpool. So they'd also conceded 7 goals. So it was kind of like the media, they go with an agenda, don't they? And it's almost what fits. So I felt that obviously with your win, it was, Man City were terrible. With our win, Liverpool were terrible. Okay. I think with every game, you can argue teams not doing things right and therefore being bad. Mm-hmm. But then again, you could argue on the flip side, well, they were bad because we did these things good. And I think Liverpool weren't at the races, but I think in all fairness, if you look at the number of games, if you look at games last season, there were times when their back four, in particular their full backs, their wing backs, are that high up the pitch. You think, well, if we get at Van Dijk and Gomez or whoever it may be, there's chances there, and that's what we did. That's what we did well, and so it was, it did click because it was the best I'd seen John McGinn play for a while. I mean, Jack Grealish is been brilliant for a while now, but he seemed to just. I think what was good for Jack Grealish was having Ross Barkley with him. Mm-hmm. He had a player with him that he knew he could give the ball to, who was almost as good as him on the ball. Or Ross Barkley, he's done what Jack Grealish has done, but for a lot longer. So probably, he's almost better than Grealish. But a player you can give the ball to, and look after it. So I think that helped him take the pressure off. But I think so the players kind of were on top of their game, but we executed the game plan well, which was winning the turnovers, which is a tough thing to do against Liverpool. In the middle of the park, you've got the likes of I think they had Keita, Fabinho, and I can't think whether it was Henderson or Wijnaldum.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, it's still a decent midfield three, and they all do a job. They're all kind of good on the ball and get stuck in and stuff. So we did well to win, turnover possession in the middle of the park. And the idea was, as soon as we've got the ball, look wide or look forward, because you've got Grealish on the left, Trezeguet on the right, and then Watkins for the middle. So you've got pace. And also it was, okay, if those options weren't on, then we need a ball carrier. And having, John McGinn's a ball carrier as well. Ross Barkley is as well. Obviously, he's a lot more talented, and it's a lot more natural for him. So is Grealish, so is Watkins. So it was either, as soon as we get the ball and we've won it back, get it forward. And I think I think we targeted Gomez, but in all fairness, a lot of teams probably do, because they don't want to go near Van Dijk. You don't want to go. Yeah, exactly. You don't want to, do you? So you go to the other side. So we had a lot of joy that side, and I think part of that as well was Trent was pretty high up the pitch, so it allowed us that extra bit of space. And then you look at the other side as well. There were times when it wasn't as easy, but there were times when you had Watkins, who was giving Van Dijk a tough time. But the game plan was executed: get at them, get the ball forward. And I think, in all fairness, not a lot of teams did that last season. They were brilliant. They won the league last season. Fair play to them. But if you look at a lot of games, I think it was kind of almost, you don't want to go toe-to-toe with Liverpool, because they've got the quality to just absolutely tear you apart. Mm-hmm. But then what we showed last week was, if you go toe-to-toe with them and you've got the quality, you execute it properly, then you can tear them apart. And we did that. And okay, Joe Gomez had a poor game. But I think sometimes with those kind of players, I think a couple of people said it the other night, Joe Gomez is playing alongside the best defender in the league. If he hasn't got him to help him, and he's got to do certain things himself, so he's got players running at him, how good is he really? And I think we just kind of exploited his weaknesses possibly. But yeah, it was, game plan that executed perfectly. A bit of good fortune as well. But sometimes you need that, because I can't think the last time we had in a game we had any luck. So it was just unbelievable. And we scored the first one, and I kind of thought, here we go. It's good to go in front. We'll see what happens now. And then obviously 2-0. Just being a Villa fan, we were 4-1 up at half time, and I still didn't think we'd win. And it got to the point when we were scoring goals, and I just could not believe it. But every player on that pitch was fantastic for us. So it's just really good to kind of build on that, really.
It's similar to our 9-0. It was just happening, and we were just going, another one's going. It's just great to kind of have that environment where we just smashing them away. But obviously, the difference between a Southampton team and that Liverpool team is probably that Liverpool team rub the salt in the wounds. I bet you got some not so nice comments on your channel at that instance as well, especially when you play a top 6 team.
Well, I said I did that week. I did 3 pre-match podcasts with on 3 different Liverpool channels, and I said to one of them, I said what we'll do after our game is we'll get you on afterwards, and I said, but obviously if we lose, then I don't want you to come on. Obviously I was joking, but I was like, I don't want you to come on, but obviously fair play to him. He kind of said, rather than rather than, oh, you were lucky or all this kind of stuff. He said, no, credit to Aston Villa and stuff like that. So now, after that, obviously, a lot of Liverpool fans have kind of, all credit to them, have been all right, but there will be a lot of Liverpool fans who just kind of can't kind of believe what happened and would have just been like, saying X, Y, and Z about Villa. But no, it's just amazing.
It's funny because we had even Pep came after us and Rodri came after us. I don't know if you saw that when we beat them 5-2. What happened is that Rodri said, well, when you play with 11 men behind the ball, 9 out of 10 games, you don't win them, for example. And even Pep, we saw the salty side of Pep a little bit, even though he made the tactical change to take Fernandinho off, who was arguably their best player at that point. Yeah. And we put a few more goals past them. And it was so brilliant. But at the same time, these brilliant world-class managers, and Klopp is that as well, but they have a side to them where they obviously don't like losing, but it can't be their fault almost. Yeah. And that's what I find is quite funny. It kind of trickles down into the players as well. Just one player I wanted to touch on briefly. Obviously, we've just seen England play 3 matches. Your man Jack Grealish pulling up all the headlines for not getting in the game. And it seems to be that the fans and the media are all on the side for this one. So I think it'll be really interesting to see what future he holds for England going forward. Because as we were mentioned, I went on your channel recently, we were talking about how Grealish can't really get into the squad. I think it would be interesting to play Grealish and Maddison as 2 number 8s together in like a 4-1-4-1. I don't know if they'll actually ever do that but I think that formation would work. Really, we've seen it have brilliant effects for Youri Tielemans and Maddison. So I think for England, that could definitely work going forward. Just your thoughts in general on the Grealish situation and just going forward. Yeah, where do you think he'll end up in the squad next year?
It's a tough one. We mentioned it the other night, and I think a lot of people have as well, that the formation Southgate plays at the moment, he has 3 at the back, and it's, I think, essentially because, as we said, the defenders aren't great. You've got an £80 million defender, you'll know him well, he's not having a good time at the moment, but even then, with him probably being, he has probably been one of England's best defenders for the last couple of years. Even then, taking him to consideration, defensively, our defenders aren't great, and it's pretty poor. So I can see why he's done that. But at the same time, you think, especially during Nations League and European qualifiers, the games that we play 90% of the time, apart from a tournament, we're going to have most of the ball. Mm-hmm. So realistically, is there that much of a need to have 3 defenders? I don't really know, but that's the key thing when it comes down to, because, and this doesn't affect just Jack Grealish. There's also Maddison as well, possibly Phil Foden, not Mason Mount because he gets stuck in. However, but it obviously playing 3 at the back, it's of detriment to those kind of creative players, because they're at their best in the middle. And I know Maddison's played out wide before, hasn't he, for Leicester?
Very rarely. He doesn't work as well out wide as a Grealish would, but he's more set. He's more a number 10.
Yeah. I mean, Grealish, he works well out wide. I still don't think it's his best position. I'd rather have him as an 8 or a 10. But these players, because the formation for England, it's two wingers just behind or either side of Kane. So, and then when you look at the wingers, out and out wingers, you've got the likes of Sterling, Rashford, Sancho. There's probably a few others that I can think of, but those players I've named, they are kind of elite wingers, aren't they? Really, I mean, Raheem Sterling's been one of the best wingers in the Premier League for a number of years now. His game has changed probably slightly under, with Man City. He's become, I think, the way they play, he's changed his game rather than being a, guy out on the touchline coming in with the ball. I mean, we know he can do that, but I think it's more so of his using his pace and just making that space for himself. That's where he gets those goals and things like that. So, but that's Pep for you. It's more so rather than be direct, it's you kind of the tactical approach. But obviously Sterling would be first choice. Rashford's done well. Sancho as well does well for Dortmund. But then, they are that good. I think they're always going to be in the squad and they're always going to kind of be first names. 2 of them are always going to be first names on the team sheet, along with probably Harry Kane, especially when you're looking at the attacking options. In all fairness, I can't see him getting more than 10 caps for England, Jack Grealish. unless the manager changes.
Yeah.
I think if you had if you had four at the back, which surely, there's surely these guys who are playing in the Premier League. None of them, even the likes of Dunk and Tarkowski and stuff like that, you get them in, they're all surely good enough to play in a 2 as part of a back 4. And then you've got good enough defensive midfielders, whether that be Henderson, Phillips, Winks, Dyer, whoever in front. And then you can have 2, like you say, 2 number 8s in front of them possibly, or even 2 holding. If you want to be that more defensive, 2 holding, 1 number 10. Gives you that creativity. And I saw a stat earlier today, and the most creative player for England during the Nations League was Declan Rice. And he created from open play 3 chances across the 2 games, which is ridiculous when you think of the players that we've got, the talent that we've got.
Yeah.
We're not looking at an England team that's full of rubbish. We're looking at a fairly decent England team. So I just feel that with the Southgate
people as well.
Yeah, it's it's one of them. But I just feel under Southgate that for whatever reason it is, whether he thinks it's tactically, whether it's anything else, I feel like he doesn't have a position for Grealish. He said about he said previously we see Jack as a winger. Okay, fair enough. See him as a winger, not a centre midfielder. If you want it, that's fine. That's where he's been playing for Aston Villa. That's fine. And then he's now then the last however many games, 3 games, he's played a formation with 2 wingers. And he starts Jack in the friendly, but then the other 2 doesn't play at all. But he's played Mason Mount, who I don't think is a winger.
Yeah.
But he's played him in those games. And then also against Denmark, I don't know if you watched the game.
I had enough of England's rubbish when I'd end up not watching it, because I knew exactly what it was going to be like, because I've seen it for so many times with Danny Drinkwater going in times past as well, not getting in the England squad. So I think without interrupting your point too much, we've seen it from kind of if you're not part of for some reason, Declan Rice seems to be part of that top 6, but any other team, the players just don't get a say in it. And if you look at it, the 2 players that we had that are definite England starters, so Harry Maguire got in under the England squad with us, ended up selling to Man United. Chilwell last year ended up getting and holding that position. He went to Chelsea. So it seems to be this constant thing of, if they do get in the side, they're off in the next window because the club values them now they're in the England squad.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, I suppose you look at the kind of Vardy situation as well. We all know Vardy's good enough to play for England, good enough to be the main man. But then obviously the kind of question is he better than Harry Kane? I mean, people will argue that, and they're very different players, aren't they, in all fairness, the way they play. I think being a striker, you see it now with Danny Ings, and you'll see it with Dominic Calvert-Lewin as well. Not getting they won't get the game time that they probably deserve, and that's again down to the formation that England play, and it'll be the same for Grealish. And then I think you look at that, you look at his game time that he's had. Sterling dropped out the team. There was no Foden, there was no Greenwood, obviously no Maddison either. So it's kind of like, I just get the feeling that when these guys come back into the side, where will he fit in? And really, he should be, and other people have said it, really, Jack Grealish should be, you kind of build the team around him. He was the second most creative player in the Premier League last season, behind Kevin De Bruyne.
Wow.
And that's a guy who was playing for, the 17th, 17th place team in the league, the 4th worst team in the league. So, and we were rubbish for a lot of the large parts of the season, and he was I can't stress enough. People say stop Jack Grealish. He carried us on his back so often, and you've got to think, if he played with better players around him, then how good would he be? Well, we could see that by playing him in the England team with the better players around him, and but yeah, I just think under Southgate, and how long Southgate's going to be there, I don't know. Obviously, that's going to go beyond tournament football and stuff like that. I think under Southgate, I don't see there's not a place for him. So I just feel, it's good for us, I suppose, because unlike you guys, you've had injuries over the international break. We've been lucky, but also our best player hasn't really played. So, it's kind of, he's kind of fit and fresh for us. But I feel bad for him personally, because this is a guy who has, for, 3 years now, has kind of been the best player at Aston Villa, carried the club. He's played last season in the Premier League. He was fantastic. So you kind of think, like you said about Drinkwater, Maguire, the guys who've done well at clubs for a season or for a period of games, like Danny Drinkwater did well in that season. They get in the England squad, and Jack seems to have almost have to prove himself time and time and time again. And it's just a shame for him, because I want him to, you look at players who do well, you want them to have that international career alongside of them. And I just feel like, I feel sad for him to not have that. But it is what it is. It's, I suppose being, which I'm not, but if you were a selfish kind of Villa fan, then you see the kind of positive things for Aston Villa, that he's going to be fit and fresh and all that kind of stuff. But that's the way it is at the moment.
You want to see a boy from your area, like we saw with Harvey Barnes, play for England and represent you, because it's so few and far between you actually see that.
Exactly.
So especially for the England team. So just coming off a little bit of what you mentioned earlier, obviously a lot of your team is firing at the moment. I've looked at Martinez, Konsa, obviously Watkins is getting the headlines for all the right reasons. Barkley, as you mentioned, doing really well. Is there any other player that you think we should look out for? Because from the tactic wise, I think Dean Smith is definitely going to get it right for this game.
Douglas Luiz, obviously we signed him from Man City start of last season. And when Man City signed him, which I think was 2 years before, so 3 years ago probably now, when they signed him, Pep wanted him to be the replacement for Fernandinho, but they couldn't get a work permit, because obviously the kind of things around work permits were that he had to be a particular high earner in the club. Obviously, with the wage structure of Man City, he wasn't. Play X amount of games, because the players they've got at Man City, he wouldn't have done. So that's why we got a work permit for him. So highly regarded by Pep, and we got him in, and he kind of he was in and out the side, performance wise as well, was very up and down. But like with the Villa defence, post lockdown it clicked, and he was fantastic. And people will talk about Grealish, but he was without a doubt our best player post lockdown. He was fantastic. If you go back and look at games and stuff like that, his form, it was just brilliant. He was winning balls, getting the ball forward. He was just fantastic, and he's carried out that on this season. And he started during the international break. He started 2 games for Brazil alongside I think Casemiro. Wow. Yeah, it was him, Casemiro, and one other in the midfield. I can't think any. Yeah, he played those 2 games, and whoever they played, they battered them. So he's settling in well with Brazil as well. So yeah, but he's a quality player. He's what we're kind of missing. He's a good. He's not your usual kind of ball winning centre midfielder, I suppose, like Ndidi or something. He's good in the tackle, but he's more so that he's technically good, if you know what I mean. He's not a big guy, but he times everything right. And his interceptions as well are brilliant. And obviously,
does
being
he
Brazilian,
command the midfield kind of like a Yuri Tillemans on our end? Because that's the role that kind of Yuri Tillemans has. You got somebody at the back cleaning up after him, but he's kind of sees the vision, passes the ball out, and then is holding that position and kind of making that, because he's like the captain of the team almost.
Yeah. He just it's like a deep line playmaker kind of role. Wins the ball, and then he can carry it. But I think when he first came in, because of the inexperience, he would win it and he'd try and do too much. I think the Brazilian in him, but he wins the ball now. He drives with it and he just plays the right ball, and it's perfect. And I think similar to Tillemans, I think he's a kind of similar kind of player, in all fairness. But yeah, he's a player that kind of goes under the radar, because I think a lot of defensive midfielders do, in all fairness. They do the dirty work, don't they? And they almost don't get the praises, do they? So, yeah. But yeah, he's the one. Like you've mentioned, the kind of guys who are getting the goals or making the vital blocks and things like that. But yeah, Douglas Luiz would be one to look out for.
Okay, that's good to hear. And just on to the match, obviously we spent a lot of time talking about all the other stuff pre-match, but have you got any other injuries on your end? Because I'm going to read off my shopping list of injuries that we've got on our end. But is there anybody that you're really aware of on the Aston Villa end that will need, that really needs, that will be like a big loss for you?
No, I mean we've got Tom Heaton and Wesley who are long-term injuries, and they've been out since January. They won't be back till the new year. And up until a couple of weeks ago, Bjorn Engels was injured, hamstring injury. But yeah, those guys aren't starting. So apart from that, we've everywhere full strength.
That's good. That's good to hear. And fortunately for you guys, we've got a lot of injuries, as I mentioned earlier. So just in central defence, we've got Johnny Evans and Söyüncü, both are injured. I think from the recent press match conference, Söyüncü might be on the bench, but he has picked up a niggle on international duty, which is not good. Morgan is available, even though he's still just coming back from an injury, but he's still 36 years old. So 29 pace on FIFA, you imagine he's not the quickest guy in the world. Benkovic, I think, is one player that I think is injured, but I think he's going out on loan. Is possibility. We'll see by the end of the day if that happens. And then Amati, who looked great as well, who's also injured, who picked up an injury against Arsenal, which didn't look too good. He's out for a long period of time. We've also got Ndidi, who's out for 3 months with he's a big player for us. Maddison is questionable because he didn't get in the England squad, but I think he will be fit. We'll have to see about that. Dennis Pratt, who's been fantastic for us as well, does a lot of running in the midfield, will be injured. The two that and also obviously Ndidi, Johnny Evans, Söyüncü. Ricardo is still coming back from an injury, so that's a big one. He's been out since I think March, so he's probably going to be fit November time, but as you guys probably know as well, for the long-term injury, they don't just come back 100%. They slowly have to build into the game. Yeah. And the biggest one you're probably worried about, Jamie Vardy has picked up a calf injury as well. So it's not looking too good. However, there's one more player. We've picked up a 19-year-old, we paid about £30 million from St Etienne for a centre-back. So I don't know if he's going to be fit. Well, he's fit. He's ready to go. However, his roommate has COVID. So after all the injury list that we have and the potentially just one centre, we might be down to just one centre-back starting. We might have to play Christian Fuchs. But from what people are saying, what the fans are saying, and from the media conference, it looks like we'll have Wesley Fofana and Wes Morgan as your centre-backs pairing. But I guess with the amount of list that we have out, I bet you guys are kind of licking your lips after that one.
Yeah, I mean, especially you look at Morgan and his pace to come up against, in particular Watkins would be good. And I mean, I don't know much about Fofana. I mean, I imagine he's a decent player because of the fee that you've paid for him.
Zero Premier League experience. It'll be his first Premier League game as well, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it could be one of them, baptism of fire for him. He could come out on top. It could be a struggle for him, but maybe the same way that we did with Liverpool last week, we'd kind of target those areas, which would make sense to do in all fairness. But I mean, I'd imagine if Vardy doesn't play, Iheanacho would play.
Yes.
And he tends to score against us anyway. So but it's, I mean, so trying to think. So what about Justin's been playing right back, hasn't he?
Justin been playing right back, and Castagna, who's looked really good for us decently. Yeah. However, they play such a high line that if you're playing, it normally works if you play 3 at the back. If you're playing 4 at the back, they can't adventure much, and we need them for the pace in order to get back, especially with your lot. Whether Rodgers will adapt to that, because he tends to have one system he plays and he sticks with throughout the entire match, which is of detriment. If things are going wrong, they tend to go more wrong, and he doesn't tend to change much. But yeah, I think that's probably the issue at the moment.
Yeah, I mean that could be interesting for us to kind of get at you a bit. We'll see. You never know, do you? It was like, you beat Man City and then get undone by West Ham.
Yeah. West Ham, if you ever want to know, is the blueprint of how to beat Leicester City. You give us the ball, you let us, basically similar to Liverpool, give us the ball, don't know how to play, and then just kind of hit us on the counter, and you should be okay. And if that is, it sounds really bad, but if I was an opposition fan, that's exactly how I would play it. And if you're saying if Dean Smith knows about tactics, he'd be very aware of that.
Yeah, I think they tend to they put a lot into their tactics, especially John Terry as well, because he's learning. He likes to look a lot into things and put his input in. But I mean, it was like last season. Obviously, you beat us twice in the league, home and away, 4-0 and 4-1. And in the cup, obviously, we beat you at our place, we drew at your place, and it was almost like the league performances and the cup performances were very different. And we did have different tactics, in all fairness. Because I think we played with three at the back and wing backs in the cup, whereas in the league we were more 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3, however we played it. So very different. So he'll probably take that into the equation along with the injuries. But no, it's I imagine that's only going to help us, isn't it? The injuries. So we'll look forward to see what he does. But I'd imagine he'll kind of pay attention to what happened against West Ham. Obviously, what happened against Man City as well. Don't want to leave ourselves, let ourselves kind of do what Man City did, and then obviously then look at kind of how we can get at the pace of Wes Morgan, because I think was it last year, and FIFA came out and he was outraged with his pace on FIFA.
Yeah, he's the thing is he's not the slowest guy, but for a defender you need that from here to 3 meters. That's where your pace needs to be, and his is not there anymore. So his positional awareness, I think he might be just telling Fofana, you go and do the running, I'll stay back. Because especially in the game, as you were saying, the game has changed a lot in the last few years since you guys were in, and pace has become a lot more valuable. Before, Wes Morgan and Robert Huth had that protection of N'Golo Kante to do all the running for him. So you could play two slower defenders. Now it's kind of necessary that you need somebody in the back line that's quick. And that's where I think Leicester City are lacking at the moment because of Soyuncu not being there. And that's probably the reason why we didn't get Champions League as well.
Yeah, I think someone mentioned it the other day about Vertonghen. Vertonghen at Spurs was a good defender, but as soon as he lost those couple of yards of, 2 yards of pace, he was, he struggled. We saw it with Joleon Lescott when we had him when we were last in the Premier League, and we thought we'd signed a good player, but he'd lost that, and these aren't players who are renowned for being rapid.
Yeah.
It's just you lose that bit of pace and they really struggle. So that's something you've got to kind of adapt your game, haven't you? And like you said, the game has changed so much. A big emphasis is on pace, and whether that be from your wingers, your strikers, your fullbacks, wing backs. So you kind of need to have athletic defenders, don't you, really? So be interested to see how Wes Morgan gets on.
Yeah, I think, you say that with tongue in cheek. We're going to see how well he gets on, because the last few times that we have played him, it's not ended well. It's been like at least 2 or 3 goals against people. So just kind of to end up a little bit, what do you think the score prediction would be? Obviously, you're coming on a great run of form from 7-2. We're coming from that 3-0, and we're coming with a bucket load of injuries as well.
I mean, in all fairness, I think the Leicester and Villa over the years, we've been. It's never been one, even when you guys are flying high. Because I remember, I think the season before, the season after, no, it would have been the season before. You guys were kind of on the way up, and we beat you in the FA Cup. And there was games years ago where we were the better team and you guys beat us. So it's always very up and down. I think based on the fact that our form's very good and you guys have got a lot of injuries, I'm going to go for 3-1 Villa.
That's a good one. I think I was going to say 2-1 to you guys, but I am thinking that we can get a draw out of this, a 1-1. Going into this, I don't think we have the ability to win with how well you guys are doing as well, but I'm hoping for a 1-1 because of just the list that we've got. It's almost as if we're playing with 10 men. So it's like, right, let's just not go for the win. Let's just see out a draw almost. That's kind of where we're at the moment. So yeah, I'd like to thank you, Chris, for coming on once again. It's been a pleasure. Where can the people find you?
So we're mainly active on Twitter, which is @VillaTogether. We also post on Instagram, which is the same, @VillaTogether. On YouTube, which is Villa Together, and then you can find us if you search us on, I think we're on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and various other. But if you go onto our Twitter, There's a link in our bio. You click that and you can choose all the platforms that you want to listen to our podcasts on. So yeah, happy days. Follow, subscribe, whatever you may want to do.
Brilliant. Yeah, make sure to check out Chris' channel. I'll leave a link in the description to the Twitter and the YouTube, and we'll see everybody in the next video. And we're hoping for a win. We'll have to see how this goes, Chris. But anyway, we'll see everybody in the next video. So goodbye.